Genuine question, should we be concerned for Gotham Knights? Two trailers for Gotham Knights have recently been released, and yet neither of those trailers have created any sense of hype or positive feelings for Gotham Knights. Now, before I dive into this topic, there are a few things I want to establish just so we're crystal clear here. I don't want Gotham Knights to suck, I don't want Gotham Knights to fail, I don't want any of my concerns or criticisms regarding these new trailers to come off as me purposely shitting on the game. The game isn't out yet, plus we have no real impressions from any gaming outlets, and because of those two things, it wouldn't be fair for me to purposely roast Gotham Knights. Everything that I'm going to say in this video is coming from a place of concern and wanting the game to be good. Remember, I'm a DC Comics fan after all. Like most people, the initial Gotham Knights gameplay demo raised a bunch of red flags for me. There are the outdated graphics that aren't impressive by any means, there are the incredibly awkward combat animations, there's also the UI that I'm not a fan of, and then there's the biggest red flag for me, Gotham Knights gear system. You see, when you combine all of these elements and concerns together, Gotham Knights has the telltale signs of potentially becoming the next Marvel's Avengers. And I can't believe I'm going to say this next line, but in the defense of Marvel's Avengers, the graphics and animations weren't a problem in that game. However, rather than focusing on the differences between Marvel's Avengers and Gotham Knights, let's primarily focus on the one error these games seemingly have in common, because it is the biggest red flag for me after all, their gear/loot systems. Gotham Knights should have and could have learned from the failure of Marvel's Avengers. There is absolutely no reason that WB Montreal should have decided to go through with a loot system that is seemingly similar to Marvel's Avengers. Why? It's because Marvel's Avengers already experimented with this loot system and it was a complete disaster. You see, the idea of using Destiny's loot system in a superhero game doesn't work. Rather than being an interactive system, it just becomes a mindless numbers game. You get an item, see if the number is higher than the current gear you have, and if it isn't, you just delete it. If it's the same number with some sort of upgrade, like this item does fire damage instead of regular damage, more often than not you'll hold it in case you need it for a boss or a specific type of enemies. That's all. It's not memorable, it's not engaging, and in the context of a superhero game, it doesn't work. Unless the gear in Gotham Knights tries to differentiate itself by making certain gear have lore or references to other DC characters that could possibly join the game in the future, I don't see this enhancing the experience of Gotham Knights. Sure, Gotham Knights does have gear modding and cosmetic changes when you seemingly craft different gear. However, I don't necessarily think that will be engaging long term. What happens if the endgame gear doesn't look great? What happens if there's only a limited amount of cosmetic styles? What happens if we can't save certain styles in case we want to use that style instead of the default style for said gear? What happens if you have to endlessly grind certain missions over and over again in order to collect hard-to-earn materials for endgame gear or endgame upgrades? What happens if certain missions are locked to certain characters? Does that mean Gotham Knights expects us to grind certain characters that we don't enjoy playing just for the sake of a locked mission? As you can see, this could legitimately be a recipe for disaster. However, Gotham Knights could have easily avoided this potential disaster had WB Montreal mimicked a different Marvel game, Marvel Spider-Man. As we know, Marvel Spider-Man is basically one gigantic playground that wants you to explore and is designed to engage with the player. It wants you to stop a random car chase. It wants you to beat up thugs that are up to no good on a random roof. It wants you to explore every building to see if there are collectible items, which are spread throughout the entirety of New York City. Along with that, the game also has side missions that you typically ignore if you're not interested in them, such as timed missions. But to make you want to do those missions, the game gives you two rewards. The first reward are skill tokens that can be used to unlock various tools or to simply make Spider-Man stronger, and the second reward is the ability to unlock various cosmetic Spider-Man suits. And those same cosmetic suits can be switched at almost any point in time. Tired of the Spider-Verse suit? Go ahead and switch it. Curious to see how this new suit looks because you got enough tokens to unlock it? Go ahead and buy it. Want to use a new suit you got because of a story mission? Go ahead and switch it. Sure, technically there is a grind to unlock Spider-Man suits, but the grind is far more interactive than grinding for materials or items for the sake of upgrading specific parts of your gear, which would likely require repeating the same missions over and over again. To me, that's the route Gotham Knights should have gone, and I know I'm harping on the gear/loot side of things a lot, but this is a legitimate concern I have. This is the type of thing that I'd like to see the future trailers for Gotham Knights address rather than cinematic angles of in-game footage that are attempting to sell the player on the game's story. As pretty as those shots look in the new Nightwing trailer, that's not what they should have shown us in a brand new trailer for Gotham Knights. What they should have shown us are actual things about the game itself. Sell us on cool ideas or concepts that are in Gotham Knights. Show off something that might shock us and legitimately make us think, okay, now that's cool, that makes me want to play Gotham Knights. I understand wanting to remind us that the game exists and that it's coming out, but after the gameplay demo's reception, I'd argue that they were probably better off going dark for a while. The strategy I would have preferred for them to go with is letting the dust settle, giving us time to sort of forget about Gotham Knights, and coming back with a really cool showcase video that gets us excited about Gotham Knights. Having such a period where people can kind of forget about their initial negative emotions from the gameplay demo might actually help Gotham Knights. It will let people kind of be like, oh yeah, that game is still coming out, and people might be more willing to watch a deep showcase video after not hearing about this game for such a long time. However, giving us another trailer that only highlights Nightwing and his potential subplot or storyline less than a month after that gameplay demo wasn't the move in my opinion. And I hate to say this because I would love to be in a different position as of the time of this video, but I don't think the story is gonna be great by any means at all. Do you know why? It's because I'm ridiculously confident that Batman isn't dead. You know it, I know it, we all know it. Gotham Knights is doing the same exact thing Marvel's Avengers did with its marketing. Selling the idea of a major character who is crucial to the game's plot being dead. This same character who the trailers want us to believe is dead plays a major part in straining the relationships of our main cast of characters for the entirety of the game's plot until the eventual plot twist happens. That plot twist, of course, is that the character who the trailers wanted us to think was dead was actually not dead at all. And I could absolutely understand if people's counterpoint to me thinking this is, well, you are making assumptions here. You could be wrong. I see, hear, and get you. However, my counterpoint to that is, why else would these trailers continuously harp on Batman being dead? Why would the gameplay demo continuously come back to Nightwing, Red Hood, and Batgirl having a strange relationship because of Batman's unlikely death? The continuous harping, or at least repetitive nature of this, makes it seem like an obvious case of if it looks, acts, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. On top of that, this isn't the first time we've seen this before.
Do the Avengers pose a danger to society? That was the question, Bruce. That was the question.
Okay, look, I know it looks like I have actual beef with Marvel's Avengers, but I'm genuinely trying to use it as an example and a warning sign for this discussion. I promise. The point is that the Marvel's Avengers trailers also did this, where it harped on Captain America is dead. It harped on all of the strange relationships between the Avengers, which happened because of Cap's death. The entirety of the game's story is Kamala taking it upon herself to gather the Avengers together, help them settle their differences, and of course, it was eventually revealed that Cap wasn't dead, as the Avengers thought. And when you compare the reveal trailers for Marvel's Avengers to any of the Gotham Knights trailers, you can't help but realize they're kind of similar tonally, which will likely make you think Batman is probably alive. Now, as a Batman fan, I mean, I did review almost every Batman movie on my channel. You think I'd want that to be the case with Gotham Knights? You think I'd want Batman to be alive and playable? However, I don't want that to happen. I actually would prefer for Batman to be dead in Gotham Knights, because if Batman is alive and even somewhat playable, that leaves me and a lot of Batman fans with the same question. Why would you bother making Gotham Knights a game where you don't play as Batman until the very end of the game, when you could have just made another Batman game instead? There are already a few hurdles that Gotham Knights needs to overcome to get the public to be more positive about the game. If the game comes out and all of these things that I'm concerned about end up being bad and Batman ends up being alive at the end of the game, I just don't see that ending well. I really think that would leave a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. So I guess the questions become, where do we go from here, and does Gotham Knights have the potential to actually be a good game? Well, firstly, yes, I do think Gotham Knights has the potential to be good, and I feel like I must emphasize this. Despite the concerns I have and criticisms I've made surrounding the trailers, there is still a chance for the game to be good. I'm not writing that possibility out by any means at all. In fact, I'm still very much keeping an open mind, and as I said at the beginning of the video, I want Gotham Knights to be good. I don't like it when almost anything DC related fails or turns out to not be good enough. I genuinely don't think that I can emphasize that enough, which is why I feel like asking the question, should we be concerned for Gotham Knights? However, I think Gotham Knights needs to be delayed again. The hard truth is that Gotham Knights could absolutely have fun missions like Red Hood riding on a motorcycle as shown in the gameplay demo. However, a lot of people have already written this game off and likely won't change their opinion of Gotham Knights unless it gets 10 out of 10 review scores. Whether it's because of the animations, the gameplay, the missions shown off, the weird gear system, or the character designs, which I'm not the biggest fan of either, and I do hope they can address those complaints, Gotham Knights currently doesn't have the most positive reception at this very moment. And truthfully, that sucks a lot. I understand that sometimes publishers ship out games regardless if they're ready to ship or not, but I do think if Gotham Knights can be delayed again, it should be. It clearly needs more time in the oven, and that's perfectly fine. We can wait if that means the game would be so much better in the long run. As long as you're open and honest about wanting the game to be good and wanting to address some of the complaints people have so everyone loves the game in the long run, everybody would be perfectly understanding of this. Sure, there are people like me or other DC fans in general who are excited to get their hands on the next big DC video game, but if it means that we don't have to wait for a bunch of patches to fix the game because it launches buggy, I'd rather avoid that outcome. For all we know, Gotham Knights could truly be a fantastic experience. Gotham could be far more lively than we're being led on, the gameplay could be so much better than it looks, the story could be deeper than we expect with unexpected plot twists, and it could surpass everybody's expectations. For all I know, my concerns could all spawn from the game simply not being shown off in a way that does Gotham Knights justice. And if that's the case, then they need to do a better job at showcasing Gotham Knights so the game gets us excited the more we see it. However, if Gotham Knights is the game that I'm thinking it'll be, I truly hope that it gets delayed again. I and many other comic book fans don't want another Marvel's Avengers. It's never a good time when a game turns out to be bad. As I said earlier in the video, all of this comes from a place of concern. I'm going to keep an open mind and hope for the best, but by all means, I hope they take their time with this game. If all the complaints or concerns really do require much more time in the oven, as they say, by all means, please do it. At the end of the day, I truly want Gotham Knights to be a good game. However, after seeing the recent trailers, I felt like someone had to address the elephant in the room by asking the one question I really wish I didn't have to ask. Should we be concerned for Gotham Knights?